If you're a long-time NFL fan and NFL meme enthusiast like myself,
Bum! He's never been able to guard me. Never! You've never been able to guard me.
then you would have very likely encountered this meme from time to time. This is actually a meme that I've seen countless times and tends to go around back onto my feed every 6 months or so. NFL meme accounts aren't particularly very creative and they tend to get a little bit desperate during the off season, I've noticed. But every time I do see it, I chuckle and sometimes show my girlfriend and think to myself, that's a long time, he must have seen it all. Admittedly, in the current year of 2025, the meme isn't particularly accurate anymore, with Johnson, the person in the picture, retiring quite a long time ago. But nevertheless, you see this man in his 90s on the sideline and you can't help but wonder, what did he see? And more importantly, who was he? Who was John Johnson? Born on the 31st of March 1917, 8 years prior to the formation of the New York Giants, John Johnson grew up close to the organisation which he would later call his home, Seabright, New Jersey. He graduated from Long Branch High School, which is actually situated around 2 hours south of where MetLife Stadium stands today. He'd later go to college at the Swedish Institute of Physical Therapy, situated in New York City, before spending a few years working as a civilian athletic trainer at the Air Force Hospital in Ottumwa, Iowa. Ottumwa, Iowa. Close enough. It was around this time that he met and married his wife Esther. In 1947, he returned to New York and began what would be a 56-year stint at Manhattan College, working as an athletic trainer. 1 year later, he began what would be a 60-year stint with the New York Giants. That's right, he worked 2 jobs for almost 60 years at a time. Johnson explained this by saying, in those days, you could work 2 jobs. It would be football in the morning and I'd go to Manhattan College in the afternoon. The year that Johnson joined the Giants, they were coached by Hall of Fame coach Steve Owen towards the latter quarter of his 24-year stretch with the team, and they were facing a 4-8 record. At quarterback, there was Charlie Connolly in his rookie outing. The quarterback would stick with the team for some time too, eventually retiring after the 1961 season with 2 Pro Bowls, a championship season, and a year where he finished second in MVP voting behind Johnny Unitas. In a few years, he would meet Hall of Famers and Giants greats like Arnie Weinmeister, Sam Huff and Frank Guilford. He'd even shared the sideline with a playing Tom Landry long before he became the Dallas Cowboys coach and one of the greatest and most influential coaches of all time. 8 years after his arrival in New York, the team won their 4th championship in 1956, played at Yankee Stadium against the Chicago Bears on December 30th. The Giants were actually underdogs here, but they eventually won the game 47-7. John Johnson would later describe the win like this: "We went out, we played the game, came home and had dinner. That was it." Over time, Johnson began to be more affectionately known as Doc or Mr. J. He'd go on to share the sideline with more greats like Y.A. Tittle, Fran Tarkenton for a few years, and Larry Zonka for a few more years too. Of course, he'd then share the sideline with Lawrence Taylor and Bill Belichick, and I can't even begin to imagine the stories that he would have during that period in this kind of 80s Giants era. That'd be crazy. But yeah, this brings us to those kind of 80s and 90s Giants. Over halfway through his tenure with the team, John Johnson was a part of another 2 championship teams. Firstly, the 1987 and then the 1991 Giants. Following this, much of the framework of that short dominant period for the Giants would go their separate ways. You'd have Belichick go to Cleveland, Taylor and Phil Simms went to retirement, Bill Parcells went to New England. But like always, John Johnson stuck around. Of course, the Giants would reach the Super Bowl again in 2001, where they'd lose to the Ravens in a blowout. But again, following this, John Johnson would stick around. It actually wouldn't be until 2003 where he'd eventually start looking at scaling back a little. Eventually, the kind of thought of retirement gently loomed in the back of his head, and he retired from Manhattan College following an open heart surgery, but he remained in the NFL. Along the way, from the beginning of his career to this point of retirement at Manhattan College, he was inducted into the Manhattan College Hall of Fame in 1982. In 1990, he received the Distinguished Service Award by the Manhattan College Physical Education Department. In 1997, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award by Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. In 1998, the American College of Sports Medicine provided him with a similar award there as well. The National Invitation Tournament Metropolitan Basketball Writers Association honoured him in 2000 with their Distinguished Service Award, and following his retirement, they actually named a training room within Manhattan College in his honour, under the kind of idea to highlight unselfish and careless service. Careless? No, not careless. Unselfish and caring service to thousands of Manhattan College student athletes, coaches and Christian brothers. In the years that Johnson stuck around that little while longer, the Giants drafted the promising Philip Rivers, but then obviously swapped with Eli Manning on the night of the draft, and the all-time great Michael Strahan was nearing the end of his illustrious career. John Johnson stuck around that little while longer until he decided that he could do it no more. Midway through the 2007 season, John Johnson decided that that season would actually be his last, and he would see out the season no matter what happens and no matter how it ends. And the final game which John Johnson ever stood along the sideline for was actually one of the craziest matches in NFL history, Super Bowl 42. In fact, he even stood alongside and watched one of the craziest plays of all time, the helmet catch. And some might even argue that the 2007 Giants was one of the craziest seasons of all time for a Super Bowl champion. So it was fair to say that John Johnson had a lot of fun on that sideline that year, in his final year. During his final season, he actually sat down with the New York Times for an article. During this, he actually explained his reason for retiring, which was, and I quote, "I kind of felt like it was time to give up," Johnson said. "The stairs on the airplane are getting a little bit too difficult to get up, and walking in and out of here, the long walks in the hotel and whatnot, you know." He then went on to discuss how the thing he would miss the most is the stories and secrets shared within the training room, the memories. The championship which John Johnson was a part of in 1956, 52 years before the day he retired from the NFL. Well, he was the final member of staff from that championship team by a wide margin. And with the ability to watch one NFL championship, 3 Super Bowl wins along his career, as well as witness 874 regular season games, 34 postseason games, I'm sure it's very easy to say that John Johnson was very glad that he stuck around. In 2015, the Giants inducted John Johnson into their Ring of Honor. 1 year later, he would pass away on February the 28th, 2016, just 1 month shy of his 100th birthday. Johnson was survived by 2 daughters. He had a son-in-law, a grandson, and several nieces and nephews. He actually spent 60 years with the Giants and 56 with Manhattan College. He saw 12 coaching regimes and 5 general managers with the Giants, as well as several generations of the Mara family. Johnson saw iconic Giants moments like the Miracle in Meadowlands, the helmet catch, and Scott Norwood's missed kick in Super Bowl 25. He saw practically the entire evolution of the game as we know it today, and he was around with the likes of like Sammy Barr and ended with the likes of Brady, that's crazy to kind of add up in your head. The one man witnessed almost the entire history of football from the sidelines and had a front row seat for it. When asked about the Giants as an organisation, Johnson had this to say: "This organisation is a great organisation. They take care of their people. Look at me, they took care of me all of these years."